Hello, it's Cromwellathon week 2, and Alf is back, and we have a new visitor, which is Steve.
Hello.
Also known as Tilly's dad. Yeah. Rose's husband now. And we've all been reading the next chunk of Wolf Hall.
I have possibly cheated slightly on the chunk distribution, as you might be able to tell.
Yeah. So Alfred, who was dragged kicking and screaming, no, not quite, but something like that, into taking part in this, is now very cheekily romping ahead.
Can't complain.
We could hardly drag him here to make this video because he said
It's getting in the way of me reading.
which is true.
Yeah.
But take your mind back to the chapters that were actually this week's chapters, and let's see what we thought. Any kind of significant impressions? Now, Steve, you are rereading it like me, aren't you?
Yes. I think it seems to be a fair amount of scene setting in this chunk. There's a bit of exposition where people explain things to other characters, but it seems to me that it's very much a case where we're getting some insight into Cromwell's character, how he organises things and has always organised things, and how he uses his skills in a fairly Machiavellian way. And he mentions Machiavelli.
Oh yes.
The implication is that he knew him at some stage. So he's moving and shaking behind the scenes, I think.
But you also get him as quite a kind of practical fixer, don't you?
Yeah, I think in the first sort of chapter of the section where, like, the Cardinal Wolsey's been cast out and they're running away to a different palace, that, like, Cromwell is the one that's saying, okay, can we check which of the food in the kitchen is good to eat? Is there a bed being made up so that the Cardinal can sleep? Like, everyone else is panicking about just the wider picture, but Cromwell's focused on what is immediately necessary as much as anything else.
Yeah. So it's really establishing him as not just someone who... Well, she really likes to show him as multi-talented, multi-skilled, with practical skills. And sometimes she goes into a bit of a list thing with that. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, which isn't my favourite stylistic quality of hers. When she does one of those lists of, he's the person you go to if you want this or you want that, or
it's got quite like the sort of sing-song character that I do quite like sometimes.
Like in a epic.
Yeah, or just in like a yeah.
Oh, that yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that works for me. It has a rhythm. It builds up a rhythm to it, and as well as explaining Cromwell's character, I think, that works for me. Because he's being painted in a very, very positive light in this book, and it's a way of listing his skills and talents. I think, in a positive way. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. My favourite chapter of the ones that we read this time was the first one, the one about Wolsey
fleeing York Place.
That was an absolute tour de force, I thought.
It's the third one, is it, where his wife? I think that one, I kind of preferred that slightly. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, there were some really moving sections in this bit, weren't there?
Yeah, and she sets them up well in her writing, I think. There's talk of fevers and sort of portents, or she lays down the stuff very nicely, and he goes off to learn Polish, and no one can find him at the same time as his wife dies. And I think that she'd laid the groundwork for that, so that it worked very nicely.
And I like, especially because with this set it's achronic, so you've got the first bit is in 29, and then the next one is from 21 through to 29. So he's talking in 29 to Cavendish about how he doesn't have a family to go back to, so he can stay here all night. And it's like, if you're just reading that quickly, you might think it's like, this is more important to me than my family. But then obviously when you go through the 21 through 29 bit, it's like, no, his wife and children have died.
Yes, tragic losses, and it really humanises him, or did for me, particularly the scenes when his children die. I mean that was a welling up moment for me.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I think also for Cromwell, I think something that you were speaking about earlier on, Alf, was the relationship between him and Wolsey.
Yeah.
Is a fairly familial one. It's almost like the father-son thing.
And I think that all of that loss does kind of explain more about why he sticks to Wolsey so hard, even when it's kind of all falling apart.
And Wolsey almost encourages him to transfer his allegiance.
Yeah, no,
he sort of says,
maybe bounce over to the
over to the other side. He wants him to have a future, doesn't he?
And Cromwell does do that, but he sort of profits by doing it late. Because by showing that he was true to Wolsey to the end, people believe him that he's a trustworthy person.
You're jumping ahead. Just because you've cheated,
Spoiler
there'll be
alert.
people out there that haven't.
Spoiler alert.
Another really interesting scene for developing Cromwell's character, or making you understand him better, was the one where he reacts when he thinks. I'm explaining this really badly. The one where he reacts as if he thinks Wolsey's about to punch him or stab him or something.
Oh yeah, that's very good. It's like right near the start of the occult history, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and the sort of past trauma.
Yeah, it's both from his own father, right from the very opening of the book,
the abuse.
His abuse as a child, but also his experiences in the war. And I think you sort of said, you could describe that as PTSD.
Potentially.
These days it could be, his, and that might go some way towards explaining his desire to sort of ease things and smooth things, but his willingness to back it up with force.
Yeah, but he'll always look for the compromise. Like there's a bit towards the end where he's trying to get. He says to Stephen Gardiner, can't we just let this drop? This enmity and he seems to mean that really genuinely, and then Gardiner says no, and then he says, it kind of implies, well, I'll make you pay for that one day. So he'll go for the compromise first.
I think a lot of the time my reading of this is the office people compromise they know they won't take, so that he doesn't have to feel bad about being harsh to them.
That's interesting. Interesting. One of the relationships that starts to develop in these chapters is between him and Sir Thomas More.
Yes, and that's obviously a fascinating one, just from a sort of historical perspective and nothing else.
Yeah, and the way they
jostle for position.
Jostle is the word. Jostle, jockey. Yeah,
well, it's that verbal jousting thing.
Yes, that they both quite enjoy, but they're also both trying to get one up on the other. Yeah,
get one to get them to admit saying it.
It's getting hostages to fortune, isn't it? So you say in public things against the king, or that could be interpreted as being against the king, that can be
heretical,
that can be used against him.
Yeah.
The heretical thing I think is interesting because there is this backdrop. There's almost like a whole other story going on behind it of the Reformation and the religious wars, and every now and then there'll be a little mention like, do they fear you? Well, they're not monks. And this idea that actually Cromwell is involved at this stage in reforming the houses of religion, which obviously will accelerate much further as Henry
wants the money.
Wants the money, but also wants the divorce stuff. And basically, we're witnessing the birth of Protestant England.
It's
it's been going on for a while, but
But I don't know if you'd see that because Henry is and always thinks of himself as Catholic, even when he's divorcing himself more and more from the church. But you do. What I think is interesting is that clearly, with all these trips to places and these conversations, there's probably a whole other story being told of Thomas Cromwell doing secret Protestant stuff that is just present in the books only as a vulnerability and a thing he sometimes goes and does, rather than as a big activity.
Yes, no, his knowledge of Tyndale and the Dutch and the
his relationship with Bilney and all of that.
Also Wolsey as well.
Oh yeah,
Wolsey is very tolerant of that in a way that you wouldn't expect. Although he does freeze people to death in a cellar.
But then he feels bad about it afterwards.
Oh, he does, very bad.
That's all right.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I found really interesting is the different powers in the country, and the fact that the church, the Pope, it's like they're still working out who's in charge and how this state is going to work.
Yeah.
That's like on a political level. That's fascinating, and and some of the exposition we get in that long chapter. Is reminding us as readers
that so Wolsey owns a huge amount of land and wealth and has that power through the church, but then he's dependent on the Pope, but also wants to become the next Pope, which is why he goes over to France to an extent. We've got these various nobles, some of which are properly old and some of which are only kind of relatively new because they've been instilled in lands following the Wars of the Roses.
And the Civil War was not that long ago.
And Parliament
is emerging, but not
that check against the balance of the king compared to the continental monarchs to some extent.
Although still seen as just a bit of a nuisance rather than a major force. So that's all really is interesting. And the other thing that I enjoyed in this section was the way Catherine emerges as a stronger player and a stronger character.
Well, she's got a game of her own that she's playing, isn't she? I mean, she's been forced onto the back foot with all of the stuff that's going on, but she's not going quietly. She's very much.
Well, you were pointing out that she's like old royalty compared to the Tudors.
She's of the
Bourbons, isn't she? Habsburgs.
Yes. So everyone's sort of like, oh, couldn't you just like pipe down and go off to a convent and stop making a fuss? And it's like, no.
if the king will be a monk as well,
but she damned if she will.
And it's like these people refusing to compromise that is like at the core of this conflict. So she won't back down on that. The Pope won't back down, partially because of pressure from her family. But like equally
people end up in confrontational situations rather than being able to slide out of it. But as a woman, it's interesting, and it's really interesting to be reminded that like our notion of Henry VIII is this man with 6 wives, as if they all turned over quite fast, but that they'd actually had this 20-year marriage and multiple pregnancies and that whole history, and that little detail about her sewing his shirts was a very sort of intimate lovely detail. So all enjoying it still?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back and finish it.
Remember, you have to get up for work in the morning. No reading all night. You can do what you like.
It's his birthday tomorrow. We can read whatever we want.
Yes. So happy birthday for tomorrow to Alf, and see you all next week.
Bye.